Almondine, have you ever heard of Watership Down? I'm curious. Have you ever heard of Watership Down? Yeah, you don't feel pressured to if your hands are if you're multitasking or your hands are busy elsewhere. Don't feel pressured to participate in chat more than you already are because you're keeping a fairly low profile. And of course, I want this to be oh, you never heard of it, but you never read or watched them, but you should. Like, hey, I'm so into Watership Down. I've got Inlay here, the Black Rabbit of Death, and then I have Lord Frith, the image of Lord Frith here on my my word processor. This little contraption, this is one of my many portable word processors. I also have this one here. This is my my daily driver word processor. This little machine has no apps, no games, no internet access. All this does is write, and I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. Almondine, you've got a Neo too. Okay, you know what's going on. You know what's going on. Hey, oh, Almondine. Oh, you just opened Pandora's box. You know what else I've got? Yes, I've got a Freewrite Traveler. I've got this thing. Now I mind you. Now we put it back away because Now what I actually started doing with my Freewrite Traveler. Now I have an interesting relationship with the Freewrite Traveler because it's like the little fold-up word processor, the Alphasmart Neo 2, that thing. Like, no, not the Alphasmart Neo 2. I mean, talking about the my Pomera DM100. That one's actually a Japanese import. And the cool thing is that all you need to do to switch the keyboard over into English mode is to just press the caps lock key. It instantly switches it over to English. And you can switch the interface over from Japanese to English, and the option to do that is already in English. So it's all in Japanese, and then you just see one thing that says English. You just click on that, it switches it over to English. Oh my goodness. I went from writing, and my professional and recreational writing lives have been totally transformed by having that little word processor to be able to carry it with me everywhere I go. Even more portable than the Neo 2. And, okay. No, but what gets me is that, okay, so I have this thing this machine I had to import from Japan. How is a machine that I had to import from Japan that was designed to write in a language that I cannot read or write more useful to me as a writer than the Freewrite Traveler, which is actually designed in America for writing in English? Like my DM100 here, this thing feels like it's mine. I feel like I own this. I put the stickers all over. I feel like this is part of my soul, right? The Freewrite Traveler, I feel like that will never belong to me. I feel like I'm renting that from Astrohaus. I feel like a representative from the Astrohaus is standing over my shoulder, slapping my wrist whenever I'm not using that thing in exactly the way they intended it to. The Pomera DM100 is a portable word processing only machine that is ready to be used. It presents itself to the user to be written on. The Freewrite devices are devices that challenge the writer to conform to a very specific vision that Astrohaus holds of their ideal writing workflow. And you have to learn this very specific interface vocabulary to become proficient at using it. It's kind of funny. I actually posted, let me go ahead and drop, if you're interested in reading some of my writing, on my Tumblr there. And I actually just posted today about how I started this new tradition on Fridays. I got my Traveler back in October. I've barely taken it out the house. And it's like, okay, this is not... I like my Alphasmart, I like my Pomera DM100 so much more than the... I like it so much more than my... I like it so much more than the Traveler, but I want to get hours and hours of writing time in on my Traveler so I could give it the most in-depth, experienced breakdown and criticism I possibly can for that thing. Because it's like, I'm constantly frustrated with Astrohaus. I'm constantly frustrated with the form over function design philosophy of the Astrohaus product line of word processing devices. But I am so fascinated by the machines, and mind you, I could talk all my criticisms about the Traveler. It feels wonderful to hold in your hands. It feels wonderful to type on. But the thing is, when I take my Pomera DM100, when I take my Alphasmart Neo 2 with me, I could start a manuscript and I could finalize a manuscript on the machine. Whereas the Astrohaus devices are so obsessed with being editing only. You know, it's for drafting. It's the ultimate drafting machine. You know, for finalizing and editing, they want you to export it to your PC and finish it on a proper PC. And it's like, and the thing is, with the original Freewrite model, what they now call the Smart Typewriter, that machine is like, it is so. I'm sure they'll swear this up and down, but I would bet on my life, if I needed to, that their primary concern with designing the original model Freewrite, the Smart Typewriter, their primary concern was I guess appropriating the visual design vocabulary of a 20th century typewriter as much as possible. I think that was their primary concern, and 20th century typewriters did not have arrow keys on the keyboard, therefore our machine will not either, and now we have to justify that, so we'll go with, we believe in this writing-only workflow for our machine, and it's like, I'm having a very hard time believing that you did not decide that this has to look like a typewriter as much as possible, and especially with the original, working title for the device being the Hemingwrite, because they did not consider, hey, maybe we should get a formal blessing from the estate of Ernest Hemingway before we name our device after him. Now, they later did get, formal blessing and ended up creating their device specifically with the Ernest Hemingway branding and with the Ernest Hemingway, Almandi's saying they feel like they were too concerned with making the ultimate writing tune that they missed the mark of a simpler and more capable word processor. I really don't even think they were out to... I don't know. It's like I don't know, Almandine, are you familiar with that old Nicktoon Doug? It's like they wanted to make a device specifically to appeal to Judy Funny. And it's like, I have a background of... I've been after portable word processing since in the 90s. I would use an actual little Casio organizer that's meant for writing in phone numbers. I would use that for word processing. Then I moved on to a Cyberco, if you know of those machines. And I didn't know about the Alphasmart line at the time. But throughout high school, I was actually using a 2001 model Apple iBook before it became the MacBook line. The better part of it, later on when they switched the Intel processors, but I was well into college by then. But, so I've been after portable word processing from a very, and the reason I use those machines and those different machines is I'm a writer, but I have fine motor issues. So, handwriting, it's very slow, it's very painful, it's very deficient. And for functioning at full speed in a classroom setting, especially in a 90s classroom setting before computers and classrooms were common, word processing was an essential part of my special needs arsenal, and that's why I was using because on one hand, it's not nice not having to lug around an Apple II and later on a Macintosh LC from classroom to classroom to do my word processing stuff. And it's like, oh, I could actually sit at my desk and do word processing, and look a lot more like a normal student. But having a laptop in an era before teens even had regular cell phones, and smartphones weren't going to be a thing till well after I left high school. It did attract a lot of unnecessary attention, and as cool as having a laptop was in an era before, before Game Boys even had built-in lights in them. And that's another thing about Astrohaus that bugs me, is it's like, okay, with the Traveler, and with the upcoming what did they call it? The Freewrite Alpha. They're sort of zombification of the Astrohaus their zombification of the Alphasmarts. Is like, okay, you want these to be high-end boutique artistic tools for writers. Like, we're willing to pay top dollar to get bespoke equipment to do their writing on, when they could easily do it from a PC they can get at the for $20 from a thrift shop. So when you have an audience, a captive audience who wants bespoke writing equipment and willing to pay high-end prices for it, you're not going to put a backlight in every single model in 2023. Meanwhile, the Game Boy Advance SP, a children's toy from more than 20 years ago, had a light built into it, and that was, like I said, it's literally a children's toy. It was meant to keep kids quiet in the backseat of the car while their parents are driving to the supermarket, and that had a light built into it. But you have this high-end clientele of people who want these really top-of-the-line creative tools, and you're not going to put a backlight in every single model. It's ridiculous to me. And yes, I do have a fully paid off pre-order for the Astrohaus Neo. No, okay, so Almandine, I'm gonna tell you something. I don't have confirmation for this. Maybe I'm flirting with hubris. Maybe I'm flirting with thinking a little too highly of myself in doing this. But I think I have reason to suspect that Astrohaus may have actually changed the reveal time of the Astrohaus Alpha, the Freewrite Alpha, because they knew I was going to cover it. Because I don't consider myself an enemy of Astrohaus. I bought 2 of their devices. I plan to buy the smart typewriter eventually too. I have considered myself an adversarial enthusiast, is what I consider myself of Astrohaus. I want them to exist. I want them to continue to exist. I want them to be as successful as possible, because the longer they're successful, first off, they're making my reviews are fantastic. Have you read any of my reviews on other sites, or are you actually just giving your assessment based on what I'm saying as I run my mouth playing Tetris? I'm just curious, just so I have a sense of what's going on here, of what you're saying that in relation to. Yeah, I consider myself an adversarial enthusiast. I want them to exist. I forced myself to take my my Freewrite out instead of I had to leave my Pomera DM100 at home and take out my Freewrite Traveler. I'm calling it Freewrite Fridays, and so every Friday I'm gonna leave my DM100 or my Alphasmart at home and take out my my Freewrite Traveler. And actually, Friday, just a couple of days, yesterday was the first time I really sat down with the Traveler and had a really productive writing experience with it. And when I'm writing in a way that coincides with Astrohaus's intended workflow, I have a good time with the machine. It's wonderful to type on. The e-ink screen, that's one thing I'll say. And I've seen people get this way with some of the other devices, because some of the newer devices in the Pomera DM line do have e-ink screens, and I've seen people complain how could the models of the the Pomera DM line by King Jim that are complaining because, oh, why do they have an LCD screen on this? It should be e-ink. And I'm like, yeah, e-ink is great. It looks great. It's great to read on. It's fantastic for reading on. It is not always ideal. I don't think it's ideal for writing on. Because... Oh, you found me from my post about the Freewrite Alpha. Okay. Alright. Oh, man. Oh, so you saw me tear that thing to shreds. But you see, I still put my money where my mouth is, and I'm not... I mean, I have it better than most. I'm blessed to be in a position where... No, and I don't blame you, because that's the thing. E-ink is great for reading on. It is not ideal for creating on in real time. Now, to be fair to Astrohaus and their enforced, insistence on their devices being, for drafting only. Now, they relented a bit with the Traveler onwards and with future updates for their smart typewriter, where they do allow you to move the cursor, but moving the cursor around with that low refresh rate, it's not ideal. And it's like, yeah, e-ink is more high-end, but... And that's one thing with the DM100. It has an LCD screen, but it is a very soft, sort of lit LCD screen. And in direct sunlight, it is not like using most device screens in direct sunlight. If you take that out in direct sunlight, the screen has a certain absorptive property. It absorbs the light and it lights up the screen. The direct sunlight, it doesn't fade the screen out. And you could turn the backlight off on your the DM100 and see the screen, and it looks like you're reading on e-ink, but with an excellent refresh rate. So the refresh rate's frustrating, but it is a nice device to hold, a nice device to look at. But that's another one of the things. If I was going to design a machine, and that's another one of the things, because I've been watching, and I have to go remind myself of a lot of the little shortcuts and the way you have to learn to use Freewrite, because that's another thing. The Pomera, and this is an advantage I think the Pomera has over the Alphasmart, is that the Alphasmart is... like the interface, it's not a computer interface. You do have to learn your way around it a bit. But the Pomera DM100, you use the arrow keys to operate the interface, but the interface is plainly obvious if you've ever used any modern computer graphical user interface. Whereas with the Freewrite devices, you do have to learn your way around it a bit. You have to learn certain key combos and how to move around. It makes you want to learn. You have to learn its sort of design vocabulary, I guess you could say. And speaking of design vocabulary, you have Astrohaus. They make their original smart typewriter. They want to make it look like a 20th century typewriter. That means no arrow keys, and they justify it with, oh, it's meant for drafting only because going back and editing is too much of a distraction and whatever. And there's some writers who will swear by, they will compare the Alphasmart with the Freewrite and be like, well, one downside to the Alphasmart is that it has arrow keys and you can edit on it. And they consider that a negative because it's too much of a distraction for them. No, I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of poetry writing that depends heavily on control of line lengths. Where when I'm in my process, I'll be swapping lines back and forth and messing with line lengths where I want to break a line, where I want to... And that needs... You need to be able to edit. You need to be able to copy and paste the line below and above, or copy a stanza to try a slightly altered version. And I'll be real with you. Everything about the Freewrite family of devices is explicitly hostile to creating in that way. And then, there are people who write in fountain format for screenplay stuff. I write in fountain format, and it's like I've written many full-length scripts on my Pomera DM100. I couldn't imagine attempting that on my Freewrite machines. There are certain things that are good. I would maybe consider writing on that. Oh yeah, and the Neo 2 has that timed writing mode that I never even used and forgot existed until you just uttered that to begin with. Now what was I getting at? Oh yeah, just the fact that they make their original smart typewriter, the original model Freewrite, without that without the arrow keys because they wanted to look like a typewriter. Because, you know, retro, you know, whatever. So they designed the Freewrite Traveler. And first off, like, just thinking about going from the smart typewriter to the Traveler, it's like, okay, you're writing on a smaller device, it's going to be more portable. You don't think there's a potential that there's going to be more of a requirement to have the ability to move the cursor and do some editing potentially on this machine? But they relented. The fact that, and I think they relented after they did all the hardware engineering and finalized that, and then they decided, you know what, we gotta relent, we're losing too many sales based on people being unable to move the cursor. So they worked it into the software, and it's like, okay, looking at the Freewrite Traveler, and looking at where my hands fall on the keyboard, right on that top row, right next to, in the upper right corner, you could just put a little white D-pad, just like on the Wii Remote here. Just put that up in the corner and use that to move your cursor around. You have dedicated movement for the cursor without having to add arrow keys, which would, like, to a certain extent, it would compromise how nice the keyboard is to shrink certain things down to have the arrow keys. Now, the keyboard on the Pomera DM100 is fantastic with the arrow keys. I never found that to be a problem. But, so you don't want to sacrifice, you know, making certain keys smaller on the keyboard to have a dedicated cursor movement, then add a little directional pad to the upper left to move the cursor around. Well, no, and I know exactly why they wouldn't go with that. I know exactly why, because they don't want to they already compromised the typewriter design vocabulary by, you know, going from the laptop form factor, the original model, to this the typewriter-like format of the original model to this laptop form factor. You get to add a D-pad, which is vocabulary lifted from a video game machine, would not mess with, like, the what they call the artistic purity of the machine. And I'm not making that up. That's something, I watched this, and I'm going to be covering this on stream. Almondine, because you're here. And anyone who happens to be here, I'm going to spoil something for you, or give you a sneak peek. I am planning to introduce writing streams into my Twitch streaming, the types of streams I do on Twitch. My retro gaming streams, modern gaming streams, reading vintage game magazines, doing watch parties and watch-along stuff, and I'm going to be adding streams where I'm sharing and creating writing content on stream as well. And writing is, I don't know if since they added the ability to add custom tags, have I been able to really even, like, a lot of the writing scene on Twitch is revolved around a particular game called, it was a category made for a game called Writers, an indie game on Steam called Writers. No one actually likes or plays the game that I've seen. They use it for just general writing, which is how the retro category on Twitch started. It started as a category for a particular PS2 game called Retro. And people started using that for vintage games in general, and now that category is de facto, like, the collective category for vintage games. That's what the Writers category is becoming on Twitch. And I'm going to tell you something. I follow both the Writers category and the Super Mario Brothers category. So Super Mario Brothers, yeah, an old game, but one of the most famous games of all time. 70% of the time, there are more people streaming and watching under the Writers category on Twitch than they are streaming and watching Super Mario Brothers in category. And most of the time, the only time that the Writers category is not more populated with streamers and viewers than the Writers category are times when a particular when a speedrunner with a large following is attempting world record runs on Super Mario Brothers. And there's a lot of interesting writing on Twitch today. I think is kind of what gaming, because this site started as Justin.tv. It was not a site specifically for streaming games. That's something that came to become increasingly popular, and Justin TV reformed itself into Twitch, which was first was gaming explicit. Like, you could only stream games. Like, even just chatting was not allowed at first on Justin.tv, which was unfair to people who built audiences and communities around, you know, just chatting type stuff who didn't play video games, who are now getting banned from Twitch because they don't play video games. And, you know, they very quickly found their way around that and how they wanted to run their site. But when those early gaming streams on Justin.tv, like it was like the Wild West. Like no one knew how to make a show out of playing a video game yet. So, capture cards weren't common yet. You'd see all kinds of things like people, like Pete Dorr, his first streams on Justin.tv, it was literally a webcam aimed at a television. No separate microphone, no capture card, and that was common practice. It wasn't uncommon. So, and that's kind of what writing is on Twitch now. No one's quite figured out the best way to present. How do you display your word processing program in an attractive way on Twitch? How do you make a show out of writing? There's all kinds of different takes. There are people who just sit there, write, and don't really have much chat interaction. They might have an audience that's silent. There are people who do lots of chat interaction. What kind of material do you want to do on Twitch? Do you risk spoiling, for people who are doing like novel type content, you're risking spoiling your novel by editing and writing it live? Can you even, there's a lot of people trying to figure out how to make a show out of writing. And then there's and if you compare it to art, it's interesting because right now the writers scene on Twitch right now seems to be aimed more at writers. Whereas if you look at the art stream on the art category on Twitch, most of the viewers are not many of the viewers are not artists themselves. And so it's how do you transition from having those these writing-based streams that are really rooted within, that appeal to the writing community, to having something that is appealing to, you want to get a Volvo station wagon? Oh, I love Volvo station wagon, Serial Wars. I would love to get a 240 DL station wagon. Absolutely my dream car someday in the distant future, perhaps. Dare whisper of a dream. In 1982, I would go a little later into the 80s, late 80s-ish, maybe very, very early 90s. But once they stopped, I like the super boxy look. Once they started getting a little too streamlined, the appeal kind of fades for me. But yeah, how do you go from... And one thing I think, being familiar with, online writing workshops, online writing seminars, it's very apparent to me that many of the writing streamers that I've seen are people who have their setups and their webcams and their mics are basically, it's the setup you make for doing an online writing workshop or an online writing seminar, and they're like, hey, I have the setup, let me go on Twitch. And that appeals to other writers. It's not so good for putting on a show for people that are non-writers. And when you're dealing with text instead of images, like with visual art, you already have an upward sell to try to attract people who aren't already writers into watching. So I'm interested to see how the writing scene develops over the months to come, and I'm interested in being part of that. But yeah, I'm waiting for certain assets to be developed for me that I've hired people to develop with me. Yeah, have you been watching many writing streams on Twitch, Almandine, or any at all? Oh yeah, I never got to tell you the story. I still haven't done the story. Man, I'm getting... Yeah, and level 9 3 high is the sort of, the gauntlet, where I really have to work at getting past this one stage. And once I get past this, I think the rest will come easily. But one thing you've seen Just a Culp, and you're right about the Justin.tv comparison with that category, where that category is at. Yeah, it'll never be as big as, visual art. I don't think it will, and I don't think that's the point. The point is not to try to catch up with or, try to imitate what the visual art scene has done, but how do you do your own thing? How do you come into your own? It's kind of the Wild West right now, with people trying all kinds of different solutions. One thing, and experimenting with doing setups for writing streams, one thing I found is that my keyboard, when I'm using a gamepad now, when I actually sit down and start typing, my table moves very slightly. And I don't normally notice it when I'm writing at my desktop, but when I have my webcam on, it makes the webcam jiggle, and I'd have to totally redo my setup, not just for my webcam, but for all my other streams, because I need to move the webcam, and all my setups, my layouts are made specifically for accommodating this webcam positioning. And it's how do I get around something like that? How do I get around, how loud, because I have a mechanical keyboard. I got it before like mechanical keyboards became this sort of status symbol thing. I got it back in 2016. Yeah, and I've been working on ways to incorporate channel points to make certain elements of, you know, doing a writing stream more interesting. So there's lots of things I've been working on that I can't wait to try out. I'm going to start introducing that in April. But the original idea I originally had for writing streams, I was on hiatus at one point. It was back in earlier October or September, whenever it was that Astrohaus did the reveal for the Freewrite Alpha. And I was like, okay, they've been hinting for a few months that they're going to do some kind of lower cost entry to the Freewrite device line or device family. And they set up this website, and somehow I don't think they actually purchased the trademark for it, but they purchased the domain, they purchased the Alphasmart.com trademark and had it, like, you know, have a countdown. Yeah, they took the domain, and I don't think they actually purchased the trademark. I don't even know if anyone who holds that is still enforcing it, but they purchased the domain, so they're very explicit. I mean, calling it the Alpha was enough, but, like, they're very explicitly trying to position themselves. That's one frustrating thing. They're trying to position themselves as a successor to the Alphasmart line. But the Alphasmart wasn't about being a high concept piece of artistic equipment. It was about being a very practical utilitarian machine for writers and for disabled school students. Which in which case, like, I can never take an Astrohaus device and use it as my word processor in an educational setting the way I could my Alphasmart or my Pomera DM100. It's just not as practical. Yeah, this drafting only, no editing approach does not work for you know, an educational setting is just one example. So the fact that they are very specifically like riding on the coattails of the Alphasmart legacy only to enforce this no arrow keys drafting only approach, and it's like, okay, people aren't fighting each other on eBay bidding up the prices of these decades-old Alphasmart devices, then paying to customize them with they're not paying to customize them to remove the arrow keys. They're paying to customize them to add backlights. And what do? You make a spiritual successor to Alphasmart. You take away the arrow keys and don't add a backlight. Because when the Alphasmart devices were around, it actually was 20 years ago when having the light, like, it wasn't so uncommon to have, like, a light was a upscale feature on a lot of devices. Oh, thank you for that clapping emote. Thank you very much. I mean, that's something I didn't already say in my my take on the review. Oh, that's what I was getting at. So I was and at this point, I did not actually own any Astrohaus devices, and I've been critical of the Astrohaus and the Freewrite product line on my Tumblr for years. And I've never, I was always frustrated with, them caring more about making these artistic statements with their machines than being a practical, a utility-driven tool. That's one thing I say that I did not specifically say. Like the Alphasmart and the Pomera DM line. Those are writing machines that are word processors. They are meant for writing on. The Alphasmart, the Astrohaus devices are not so much utilitarian word processors as much as they are interactive art pieces about a very specific concept of a writing workflow. It's like more like an interactive art piece about writing than a utilitarian device for writing. And it's kind of funny how, you get this with, I know, I know exactly what you meant. And now I say all that. I was at a library yesterday with my with my Freewrite Traveler, and I was having a good time with it. Not as good as the time or as I might have with one of my other writing devices, but you get this blowback even when you read about, like the Pomera DM series, like when you read comments about it on YouTube or something like that, where people will be like, there's a coincidental to Astrohaus. I mean, Astrohaus knows they have a hipster image, and they absolutely, and I will give them this. They don't shy away from it. They're like, okay, we're going in for this, sort of maybe a bit this hipster market. It's maybe slightly pretentious sort of artiste market, but they don't shy away from it. They fully embrace it. They don't pretend to be anything else. I appreciate that. I think they're better for that, even if I'd rather them be more utility focused. But what I think is that like even aside from the Astrohaus product family having this sort of hipster like aura to them, and I mean, like with the photo shoots they do, the lifestyle and like photo shoots they do, and their messaging and the design aesthetics, it is, and I mean, and the fact that the original device, there's that whole, if you just type in hipster typewriter, you get a bunch of those meme images going around of people in Starbucks or in the park using a typewriter, and then you get a bunch of articles about the various Astrohaus devices, and what you see, and even like not only the things about the Astrohaus devices, but also ones about the more utility-focused ones, like the Pomera DM line, which, I mean, coming from Japan, I mean, there's a certain, I guess, maybe it's a cultural sensibility about utility-driven design philosophy, and creating why in the world of smartphones and tablets they could do all those different functions anyway. Is there a line of standalone writing devices that has continuing success out of Japan? But just negative reactions always from English speakers, presumably American or European, being like about the the Astrohaus devices especially, but also with the Pomera DM, or even articles mentioning refurbishing and modding stuff like old Alphasmart devices, like this is so pretentious. Just use a tablet, just use an iPhone. Why you don't need a thing that only does that? And it's like no one ever complains about a guitar because it only plays music. No one ever complains about a paintbrush and a canvas because you could only do paintings with them. So it's kind of interesting where you have writing as this particular function that, like, dedicated machines just for doing them by a mechanical or automated means are kind of a bespoke or esoteric thing, and have this aura of, I guess, pretentiousness surrounding them. And I mean, Nietzsche actually, what was that quote? Our writing tools are having an impact on our thoughts, something to that extent. I'm loosely quoting it. I don't have it memorized. But just, and he's talking about the emergence of the typewriter, that a mechanical means of writing is affecting the way people are approaching writing. It's approaching their work. It's altering their workflow. It's putting how they're writing, what they're writing about. And that's true even today, and it's something I mean, when I do my writing streams, I want to do an entire stream on that subject. Why is it seen as sort of pretentious or taboo or attention-seeking to use a dedicated machine just for writing, as opposed to any other art form? Like, most of that equipment is bespoke equipment just for those things. I mean, like with art, like, yeah, you often might use a computer with Photoshop, but just, I mean, with arts, you have those, art-only tablets and things like that. But the fact that for the most part, those things aren't for, aren't things that are by their nature likely to be used in public, it's interesting. Now, why don't I actually, I'm gonna buckle down. Let's see. I'm going to actually dedicate I'm gonna dedicate a higher. No, it's not. It's not gonna work. It's not. But I'm gonna try to dedicate a higher percentage of my brain power to clearing level 9 3 high, which I've been on for more than an hour. Not, I mean, the conversation I've had in the last couple of hours is absolutely fantastic, but I'm sure that if I used a bit more of my brain power on writing, I mean, I have writing on the brain, can you tell? A bit more of my brain power on fitting these blocks together, than talking about writing and writing tools and writing equipment. I'm quite sure that I would have beaten level 9 3 high by now.